Okay, so we are recording now. So welcome, Mr. Alan Davidson. And for those of you who don't know Alan Davidson, he is amazing. He's an evolutionary mystic who helps us to get in touch with the voices in our heads to help align them to our soul's purpose and understand the gifts that are inside of them. So welcome, Alan. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. And Jackie, I know that you really work helping people with the pain that they have in their bodies and the pain that they have in their lives. And I just want to tell everyone listening that to me, they're really flip sides of the same coin. You know, I help people to wake up to and experience through their body their true selves, their most authentic, true selves, and to begin to really sense their soul purpose and live into their divine destiny. It's like who you were meant to be when you were born into this world, when you incarnated as a soul into this world. And I'm a firm believer that, you know, outside of, real injury and chronic mechanical pain like cartilage against cartilage, bone against bone, that kind of thing, most of the pain that we experience really comes from that psychic, emotional pain that comes when we're living somebody else's life. We're living the life that somebody else expected from us and for us, instead of who we want to be in our soul of souls and our hearts to hearts.
Yeah. Yeah, and those personas, because we take on that persona, right? And they are so powerful. It's interesting that I think most people walk around thinking that we're powerless and we're victims and we can't achieve certain things. It's a language that we use that I hear all the time, but I can't do that. It's impossible. And we learned all of that, I think, from our traumas. And we create these personas and they create the rest of our lives from that space.
Well, and I just want to, sort of unpack this, for everybody. So one, we tend to think, oh, I am somebody, I am a self. And really, we are a collection of subpersonalities or personas or selves. And I want to just read you something really quick, if I could, that I think a short paragraph that'll explain this for everybody. Can I do that, Jackie?
Yes, please.
Okay. You are not a single entity. Each of us is made up of many cells or subpersonalities. These cells are the building blocks of the psyche. They are independent units or personalities or personas. Each of these cells is like an actual person living inside of us. Each has its own history, its own way of looking at life, and each has its own way of living in the world. Now, this is the most important thing. How you will behave in any particular situation will depend on the self that is in charge of the psyche at that moment. This is normal. There's nothing strange about it. This is the way, human beings function.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about the different personas, it's like, I like to say there's an entire community, an entire boarding house of subpersonalities that live within us. And I put them into three teams. There's the survival team, and they live in the basement. There's the success team, and they live above ground. And then there's the soul team that lives in the penthouse. And for most of us walking around in flesh and bones, there's this tug of war between team survival and team success. And then for those of us that are spiritually minded, we can intuit and sense our soul and the parts of our soul that are already always there, calling us into our destiny, calling us into our true self, calling us into our soul purpose. But that survival team is mighty, mighty strong, as you were saying. It's like, it's so strong that it can be like, I can't change. It's impossible. I could never do that. I'm a loser. I'm ugly. I'm not worth it. I'm not worthy. All of those functions of our mind that have gone haywire and then turned against us.
Yeah. What you just read even creates a bigger picture of how strong they are inside of us. They're like whole people.
They really are. And and if you think about, I'm a child of the 70s, so how many of you remember mirror balls in the discotheque? So if you think about each of the subpersonalities and think about each of them having a particular little square of mirror on that mirror ball. And depending on where that subpersonality is, its history, its perspective, what it believes, how it believes you should act in the world, it's looking out at the world in a very particular way and angle. And all the different parts are, glued in place around us, but they're all looking at different sections of the world in a different perspective, in a different way. And part of the work that Jackie and I do is to create that through line, that center line that goes right through the center of the mirror ball, and can very consciously select, oh, this is the part of me that would really functional at its most optimal and practical place right here, can really shine right here.
Yeah.
And there are places where team survival are really important and essential, and they can shine. And then the parts of us that are successful that we have cultivated over 20, 30, 40 years, and they can shine. And the parts of our soul, but can I be consciously in choice? Can I choose that part of me that is most effective, most practical, and that's informed by my true self, who I was born to be at soul level and living through a body.
Yeah.
So.
But that's really hard. It's hard to the first step is awareness. And for those of you who are watching on Facebook, I'd love for you guys to comment what's resonating for you, what's coming up as we're talking about all this. And it's first is awareness that we have a choice, that we can shift, and then making the decision to be present every day, to choose which voice am I in.
Right. I call that resetting to my best self. And when I notice that I, shall we say, had a little slip in my magnificence, it's like it's a moment of choice. It's a moment of consciousness. Can I reset? Can I reset to the best part of me, the most enlightened part of me, the most compassionate part of me, the wisest part of me, the most skillful part of me that can address this moment, at my fullest as a human being, rather than being hijacked by some of the survival team and coming from a place of fear or self-doubt or confusion, which is not my most skillful. But they're all survival modes, and they served a purpose to get us to this point in our bodies and our lives.
Yeah, they absolutely did. But at some point we get to a place in our lives when they're just not serving us anymore. And when we want something really different.
Right. Well, if you want to use a metaphor of a car, it's like, who's driving the car? Do I want fear driving the car all the time? Do I want self-doubt driving my car all the time? Do I want confusion? Do I want overwhelm? Disappointment driving my car? It's like, again, that's the habitual way. It's again, I always love to ask this question: how many of you were born to fully enlightened, fully embodied parents? So think about that. Everyone, enter into the chat. If you were born to fully enlightened, fully embodied parents. I've only had one person ever say that, and that young woman was sitting next to her mother and her stepfather. I'm not sure how honest that answer was.
Right.
So, I mean, our parents were human, and they were doing the best that they could with their own experience and the limited knowledge that they had. We're in a very different generation even than where our parents came from. The availability of wisdom and skills. I mean, these spiritual techniques have been around for thousands of years. But if you look at this merging between cognitive science and the way that cognitive science is now looking at how can we use our minds, and instead of them being rewired for self-destruction and self-flagellation, can we then bring the mind back into balance and use it as the tool it was designed to be?
Yeah, I have to laugh because Carrie commented LMAO, not. She did not have enlightened parents.
Yeah, that's a healthy response there, Carrie, because but most part of one of the voices in the basement, our survival thing, is to blame. If I can blame somebody for my problems, if I can blame somebody for my pain, then that's a numbing technique so that I don't have to fully experience it in my own body and in my life. And then honestly take full responsibility for it. As long as I'm blaming somebody outside of myself for my pain and my suffering, then it lets me off the hook and I don't have to be responsible, which ultimately means from that centered place and that conscious place, can I feel the intensity of my own pain, the intensity of my own emotions, the intensity of my own sensations, and I'm going to use a term here: unfuckwithable, unshakable, inexhaustible. Can I really hold it in presence? And that's where waking up to our true selves is so essential. The part of our soul that is infinite, eternal, incredibly spacious, incredibly fierce and compassionate, and unconditionally loving. And we wake up to those parts of ourselves, we can bring those infinite experiences to the sensations of our body, to those overwhelming emotions, to that excruciating pain. And it can ground us and anchor us in a way so that I'm not steamrolled by the intensity of my pain. I'm not steamrolled by my emotion. I'm not steamrolled by the sensations of my body. I can actually witness them and breathe with them and then surrender them. And here's the thing that I know at this point: if I can meet the moment open-hearted, present, no matter how excruciating that moment might be, the energy moves through me. It moves beyond me. If I don't suppress it or repress it in any way, then I never ever have to experience that energy or emotion again in that way. I am free of it. So that's the healing practice that lets us begin to work with that reservoir of pain and energy and emotion that we've repressed and stuffed into our bodies.
And I think you bring up a really important piece, because we don't think of feelings and emotion as energy and as something that can really something that's really causing us to be blocked and stuck. And nobody wants to feel their emotions. And I was thinking about this I was driving around today. I had an appointment. And doing the work with you, yes, I've been able to tap in, because I think my emotion was numbing, and there's still levels of me that I numb. I'm still working on being more present in the moment and feeling more. But some people don't want to feel the pain. But the gift is that, yes, we are able to feel it, bring it up and out of us, but we also get to feel the joy and the love and allow that to expand, that we're not feeling when we're living in the basement with those emotions.
So let me invite everyone listening to consider it this way. So yes, if I repress any experience, particularly pain or emotion, then it limits my capacity to feel joy. But consider this: Most of us are repressing and resisting our emotions, primarily because we have been betrayed in some way or at some time in our life, and we don't want to feel that again. But here's the good news. When I can presence my pain, in the kernel, at the center of that pain, is my greatest gift. Whether that's physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain, spiritual pain, it does not matter. At the essence is a gift. And as that kernel opens and I can presence the intensity of that pain, what's there is what I care for most in my life. The values that I most want to live my life with are underneath that pain. So when I can presence the betrayal, the disappointment, the rejection, the frustration, the abandonment, and really go into, I can find not only my innocence and vulnerability, but I can find my true spiritual core values. I, loving soul incarnated in a body. I am an instrument of peace living through a body. I am a miracle of joy living in three-dimensional time and space in a three-dimensional body. And that gift is hidden as long as I'm resisting the pain.
Well said. Yeah. And then
And
we suppress because we're afraid to feel that.
right. And what I want to say to you is, like, you might be hearing some of this for the very first time. And some of you might have, yeah, I've been thinking and studying this for 20, 30, 40 years. But most of us, we are not trained as human beings. It's like we were tossed into this body. I like to say that, our soul is the light of 10,000 souls, and we incarnated, and all that light got squeezed and stuffed to an infant's body. And then we went through that birth canal, and then it's like, Jesus Christ, what was I thinking, people? Like, I want to go back to the soul level. It's like in Private Benjamin when she enlists in the army. She goes, I want the army with the nice apartments, please. And lo and behold, we're in boot camp here. And and so we come through this human experience. And I would venture to say that most of you that are listening to this call and will listen to this interview, you're very strong souls, because only a strong soul would incarnate into this body with this much karma to burn through this quickly in one lifetime. So at soul level, there's an incredible courage and stamina there. But at the level of our being humanness, our human, we're not trained to learn and master and focus our attention. We're not trained to recognize our emotions. We're not trained to presence our emotions. We're not trained to skillfully communicate with each other compassionately. Sort of like we get tossed into the jungle without a handbook, and it's like, figure it out. We look to our parents and our tribe, and it's like, some of them are still clueless. Ring, ring, it's the clue phone, and they have missed the call. So.
Yes, they have missed the call. Yeah, and nothing's good or bad, right? It's what is and what's my lesson in everything.
Right. Well, and that's the invitation, and again, it's not like I'm giving the ego a hard knock or the left brain judgmental, judging mind a hard knock. But those parts of us have been in charge for too long. And they've been driving the car. They've been making the decisions. They've been in control of our experience and our responses and our reaction for too long. And they've dominated the show. And as valuable as they are, as important as they are, they've been hyper and over dominating their control. And what I just want to say is that the story is incomplete. Who you are at soul level is so much bigger than we imagine ourselves to be. And you have so much peace and joy and love and compassion available to you that you can skillfully use to heal those parts of us that are still contracted in pain, to heal those parts of us that are still contracted and suppressing and resisting emotion. So it's important. That's why waking up to our true selves is so important. So that ego, that personality that sort of believes that he or she is sort of living through the day, day in and day out, all of a sudden has an incredible ally. And that ego can actually mature and evolve and grow into our more centered self, into our most enlightened self. And at a certain point, the ego or personality, persona, then actually merges with our true self and they integrate. And we really embody our true selves in every facet of our life. Now that process takes time, but it's really the essence of what every soul is incarnated to do in this life.
Yeah. And so what is it like to live more days in that energy, living our soul's purpose?
Well, what I would say is, let's start with what it's not. Most of the time, it's not stressful. It's not scary. It's not confusing. It's not overwhelming. There's not, being riddled by self-doubt and having to second guess myself. And so moving beyond that, it's peaceful. It's, having gratitude, deep gratitude every day for the gifts that we're given. And let's face it, compared to most of the world, most of us have lives that are so much easier than people in the rest of the world. And yet there are people that are living in poverty that are so much more happier than we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so the enlightened life is really about loving what is. And it's not some, temporary, fragile, gosh darn it, I'm wonderful and everybody likes me. No, it comes from a certainty of your soul.
Yeah.
And knowing that your life has meaning and purpose because you're doing the work you were born to do. I talk about being an evolutionary mystic. You're evolving your soul's purpose in this lifetime, but you're also evolving humanity beyond this place, this sort of veil of darkness that we find ourselves in right now. And you're also evolving consciousness itself. The divine is actually evolving, and we get to consciously participate in that. We've only been conscious of evolution for less than 200 years. For the, thousands and thousands of years of human development, millions of years of mammal development, that's all been going on unconsciously. But for the first time in history, we are conscious of our own evolution. And the more we take responsibility for that, then the more power we have for being agents of healing and being a healing presence in the world.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love, for me, I grew up and I was living with a lot of fear. So this work has really helped me to shed and let go of a lot of that fear and really embody more of who I am. And I know a lot of people use the word authentic self, and people are like, what is the authentic self? But for me, it's just an inner calmness that I don't have to worry, and I can trust in my abilities to live my life, and that I'm not alone, and that I do have purpose and meaning, and I don't have to judge or criticize anything. All of that gets less. And you're right. It's not to say that by doing the work, all of a sudden we're enlightened and life is perfect every single day. But for example, we're going through a pandemic. It's been a lot easier to handle that and live through that with these tools and being able to, now that I've been able to release a lot and get in touch with those parts of me that are in survival mode and elevate them, elevate their job description, I like to say. It's been a lot easier to go through this.
Right. You know, for those of us at a certain age, from that were kids in the '60s, there used to be a little toy called Weebles Wobble, but they don't fall down. You remember that? Well, I have the modern version of that, and I keep one right next to my desk. Can you see that little Weebles Wobble? And so, you know, living as our true lives, our most authentic lives, it's like finding that center. And oh, okay, I've done my meditations, I've done my regular rituals, you know, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling in the flow. And then, you know, life happens. It's like, whoops, whoa, 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 whoa. But then I come back to my center.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm peace, I'm love. You know, I'm that part of my soul that's infinite, eternal. And then, whoops, what do you know? Something else happens. You know, my husband or my wife or my spouse or my kids, you know, come along, and it's like, ooh, let's not forget the parental units. You know, those fully enlightened, fully embodied, not parents. You know, it's like, but the question is always, how soon can I come back to my center? Can I ground myself in the skills that I know? And you mentioned the word choice earlier, Jackie. How can I choose to be my best self? Can I presence the pain and the confusion and the worry that's pulled me off center? And can I meet that with the infinite stillness of my soul, the unconditional love of my heart, and and just come back to my best self? It really, really is a matter of reset. I say recenter, recharge, and reset. And that's the recipe for being a healthy, happy human. And then we can talk about from there moving into embodying our true self, the infinite stillness of our true self, the divine love of our true self. And then we can talk about embodying our soul purpose and embodying our divine destiny. But it's being recenter, recharge, and reset. And if I can consciously work with those three things, that really is the recipe for a happy life.
Mhm.
And if that's what you get out of this, then fantastic. You're way ahead of most people in the world.
Yeah. You also mentioned what I like to think about is the ripple effect of this work. That I have children, and you know, there's a lot of moms in my group. I also don't. I know that by me doing this work, I'm clearing the path for them to have a little bit more ease in their lives, which as a mom, that makes me feel incredible. Like that alone is priceless, to know that on some energetic level, I'm making it easier for them and for all of us. There's no better gift a mom can give to their children, right? And on that level, we're also helping to create a better society,
Mm-hmm.
more conscious individuals, um, because it's hard out there. It can be tough out there. So the more we can do, and the more I can do, um, I love knowing that that's the ripple effect of this work.
Here's the irony. You know, I bet a lot of people listening to us, like myself and like you occasionally on Jackie, get stuck in overcaring and overgiving
No,
and
really?
overdoing. And again, that's a defensive part of us. You know, that's
Yeah.
that voice that's, you know, one of those sub personalities on the survival team that gets a lot of airplay for a lot of us. And that's a way that, one, we get our needs met, we get to stay in community, we get to problem solve. But once again, if that dominates our experience, then what are we teaching our children? How to overgive, how to overdo. That success means overgiving, overcaring, overdoing. And so when you begin to address that within your own self and bring those sub-personalities in the basement, in the survival team, into harmony to really begin to heal them and mature them and evolve them so that they work with and ally and support your success team and your soul team, then all of a sudden you're not overgiving, you're setting clear boundaries, but you can set them with kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're living into being a real model for the people in your life, whether it's your kids, your family, your community, your tribe. You know, when you're modeling that, all of a sudden everybody around you has to reorganize. It's like the old rules don't apply. You know, I'm really like the Jackie that really overcared and overgave. You know, I really need her to do this and handle this for me. And all of a sudden Jackie's going, you know, that's a wonderful request. Thank you so much for asking. No, thank you. And by the way, no thank you is a complete sentence.
Yes.
And so, you know, you talk about creating a legacy for your children. It's modeling these skills of fierce compassion and care that completely involves self-care and caring for our family in the most mature and wise way, and caring for our world in the most fierce and caring and wise way. And when we model that, we have given our children an extraordinary gift. We've given the younger generations an extraordinary gift. And you're right, there's no better thing that a mom can give her kids is a way to live in the world where they're true to themselves and they're living their sole purpose and they're being instruments of peace and healing presences in their own worlds.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So what are some results that your clients have experienced?
Well, I would say that the first thing they start to notice is those old habitual ways of being in the world. You know, being the victim, being the overgiver, being hypercritical, particularly self-critical, being hyper-judgmental of other people.
Yeah.
Those old ways of being begin to loosen up. And so there's more space inside the self. There's more compassion, self-care within their own selves. And from that place, they can start to develop new skills of living in the world. A lot of my clients are very successful people in their corner of the world, you know, at least have been. And maybe they realize that the career that they built wasn't serving their sole purpose and they want to change, but they've been very, very successful. But it's like they're still haunted by those old voices of, you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you're never going to make it, you're ugly, you know. It's all shame driven. And so they begin to loosen the stranglehold of shame and those voices of self-judgment and self-criticism, and those parts of them no longer dominate their experience. And again, it's not like, oh, it happens overnight, but it is a flowering. And all of a sudden you start to realize, what's the gift in self-criticism? What's the gift in hyper-judgment? And you start to realize, it's like, oh, there are important messages here, but I don't have to destroy my whole being to receive that message. And so I can actually step out into the world and I can tap into the infinite qualities of my true self and then move into the world with the gifts and talents and strengths and skills that I've developed, apply them to the values that I most want to embody the world, and apply them to the world that I want to see. And one of the things that happens is, one, I'm so much more effective and practical because I'm coming from a very centered, spacious, expansive place. And what happens is that the universe not only meets you halfway, it meets you full way. And it starts to bring you new caliber of people, new experiences, and new invitations to not only live into your sole purpose, but for the universe to feature you and say, wow, this person is doing their work. This person's saying yes to their soul and yes to the evolution of their soul. How can we bring them faster, farther in this soul's work? And it just becomes a magical, magical ride when that happens.
Yeah, I have had my moments when I've been in that flow and things show up before I even know I needed them. And I'm like, well, thank you, universe. And all the little gifts show up. It's fun. You just start wanting more and more. What can I clear away, or what can I become more aware of and shift to allow more of that in. So it gets really, really fun to live in that.
Yeah. And then when you see somebody in the world who is in such, particularly emotional and psychic pain, instead of rejecting them, there's a lot of talk about narcissism and narcissists these days. And whether someone is clinically diagnosed as a narcissist or whether they're just incredibly selfish people,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But what they are is they're suffering at such a phenomenal level in their own being. And instead of rejecting them and abandoning them, I can actually be present to them with compassion. And that's true for a lot of our parents. Our parents were pretty selfish, and they had no clue. They thought they were giving, I'm doing all this for you. It's like, really? Really? You might want to rethink that through.
Yeah.
So, when we can presence someone who's incredibly selfish and someone who's incredibly in pain, it doesn't mean I have to have coffee with them. It doesn't mean I have to be friends with them, but it's like I can presence them with compassion and say, thank you and no. Thank you and no. I'm not going to do that dance with you anymore. And what happens is a little reflection of your true self appears in the pupils of their eyes and lights a little fire in their own heart to say, oh, I can possibly take a different perspective here. I can possibly develop a little bit of empathy here. I can possibly develop a little compassion here. And so you're a healing presence by setting your boundaries, but having respect and compassion for somebody else and their journey.
Yeah. And that's been another gift, is to have gotten to that place where I can look at people and kind of be present to their pain and to look past their criticism and judgment and anger sometimes, and to love and compassion. Yeah.
Somebody can unload on me. I had a situation a few weeks ago where somebody just unloaded on me by a simple, honest mistake that I made. And it took me a little bit to find my center. But it was like, when I did, I was like, ooh, girl, you must be hurting bad, bad, honey. And, bring a little humor to it, but then really sense it's like, wow. And by the nature of our relationship, it wasn't my place to really help her. But it was my place to set boundaries to make sure she doesn't hurt anybody else.
Right.
That's that battle goddess of compassion. That's that fierce compassion that is a part of our soul. And it's the ability to set those boundaries, but also go to the root of ignorance and blindness that is the source of violence and that deep, deep self-criticism and that lashing out and hurting other people, and go to and say, that's unacceptable.
Yeah. And that takes courage, and
Well, and it's what you said a few minutes ago. It's like, to be present to other people's pain. Well, to do that, I have to be able to presence my own pain, whether that's the pain in my body, my heart, my mind, or my soul, or I would say my spirit. The soul is beyond pain. The soul is beyond that. But our spiritual self, as we know, can have samskaras or, karma, karmic imprints that get stuck in our soul. So, so it's so essential to just be aware. And can I handle my own pain? And that allows me then to presence your pain, and then not be hijacked by your pain. I can really hold my own self, my own center. And I imagine a lot of people that are going to listen to this are healers in your own right. And that's so essential for us as healers. It's like, can I hear your story? Can I hear your pain and not be seduced by it and enrolled by your story? Can I hold my space with compassion, but not get sucked into your story? And from that place, I can genuinely be with you and help you. But if I'm in your story, if I'm in somebody else's story, I've lost my capacity to help. So.
Yeah, hijack the story and hijack the experience and the gift in it sometimes.
And honey, we know some masters at hijacking, honey. There's stories of whoa. It's like, oh, that story didn't work. Oh, well, let me tell you this one, girl. Oh, ain't that so bad? Oh, that didn't work. Oh, here, I got another one, honey. That usually really gets them. You know, we're so good at using our stories, that part of us from the survival team, it's like misery loves company. I want somebody to commiserate. I think Carolyn Mace calls it woundology. I'm looking for the people who will just say, oh, poor you, you've had it so bad.
Yes. Oh, let me help you. And yeah, let me chime in here. I think there was a fine line when I was really trying to make conscious decisions that I no longer wanted to be who I was. I wanted to be a better person. And that was the fine line of, are we going to gossip? Are we going to like go down that rabbit hole? And I was like practicing. There were times when I'm like, no, I don't want to gossip. I really love that person, and let's not do that, right? But then when you haven't gossiped for so long, and you get with those friends who are just that's all they do, and you're like, oh, we're gossiping. Oh yeah, let's go. I have that.
Isn't it juicy? Yeah.
Right?
But one of the things that I see, I always think like with my affirmations, I think about, if I write out a new affirmation, well, there's a part of me at soul level and the success team is like, yeah, I want that. Part of the survival team is going, no way.
No.
Not true. That's not happening. Forget about it. Forget about it. So I always say with a new affirmation, I choose to be the divine light and love of God right now. It's like, okay, well, that again, it goes to that choice point. I can choose the part of me that wants that and believes that. And then it's like, oh, okay, then I commit. I commit to being the divine light and love of God now. And then it's like at a certain point, it's like, okay, I brought all the parts of me into harmony, and I can say, I am the divine light and love of God now.
Yeah.
And so it's the same when we talk about gossiping. It's like there's a real distinction between gossiping and criticizing other people, and then critiquing them, and offering that from a place of compassion in the way that they will grow, as opposed to make them wrong. And so as we evolve as human beings, we do move from that. And I know how sexy and juicy and delicious it can be to gossip about somebody, but it's like, that doesn't serve me, and it doesn't serve you, and it doesn't serve the other person.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, so choose, commit, be. It's like, oh, okay, now I go to the person who I have something to say that's really constructive criticism or critiqueness, and share it from a place of love. And if they hear it, great. If they don't, great. But I've said what was important on my heart to say in the kindest, most gentle, powerful way. And then it's up to them.
Yeah. Less attachment. Absolutely. So Joyce is saying, great interview. Hello, Joyce.
Hello, Joyce. So good to meet you again.
Yes, when you met her, when you came out here. So is there anything else you'd like to say? Any words of wisdom? And if anybody watching has any questions, any comments, we'd love to hear what your viewpoints are.
Well, I want to say is the thing that I love most about this work. I can talk about the survival team and the parts of us that have overworked, hyperworked.
They're exhausted.
They're exhausted, but they have served a very important purpose. Yeah. And this is not about getting rid of any specific part. I don't ever want to get rid of my inner critic or my overgiver or my overdoer, my hyperachiever. It's not about that, but it's about letting them let go of that stranglehold they have on my experience and the driver's wheel, if you will, and allowing them, one, to relax and to heal. And that's where the tapping and the meditation work that I do is so helpful, because it lets some of the voices in the basement to relax And then they can start to connect with some of parts of our success team and certainly parts of our soul team that have infinite skills to teach them so that we can stay safe, we can stay connected, we can stay intimate, and we can move from that place of perceived danger and perceived threat into then being on guard and ready for us if there is actual immediate danger that we need to react to. And so it's not about getting rid and kicking the inner critic to the curb, but it's letting that part of us know, hey, you've done a great job, you got me here, and I hear what you're saying to me, and I also have choice. And I'm going to make a choice. We're going to discern the consequences of that. We're going to look at where you're right, and we're going to look at where some new ways we can do some things. So it's about evolving those voices in the basement, our survival team, so they actually move up to serving us and helping us and allying with us in ways that are much more conscious and much more in alignment with our spiritual values and our soul purpose and our divine destiny. So it's not about cutting anything away or killing anything or kicking it to the curb. It's about loving it. Really, I like to use the term, I love this until only love remains.
I'm sorry, say one more time.
I'm going to love my inner critic until only love remains. I'm going to love all those parts of myself that are still contracted in pain or feeling wounded or still feeling abandoned. And I'm going to love them until only love remains.
Yeah. Beautifully said. I kind of like knowing that I'm loving my shit and my shine, right? Both sides. Yeah.
And when you love your shit till only love remains, then all that's left is shine.
That's right.
You got shit and shine-ola right there, sister.
Welcome to our life.
But one thing I do want to say is that it takes courage to do this kind of deep inner work. So I'm an old drag queen, honey. But I love to say this work is not for sissies.
Not for sissies.
It is not for the faint of heart. If you're a faint of heart, then you need to go, find your center and strengthen your center and build your stamina, and then come back to the fierce heat and intensity of this work. Because, when you're doing these karma clearings, particularly, you're really starting to pull back the veils of protection and the veils of numbness and the veils of defense. Yeah, there's incredible jewels of ecstasy and joy and beauty and gratitude that are in there. And they're found by presencing the pain that's still stuffed in our body, the emotions that have been trapped, and just love them and love them and love them until only love remains.
Yeah, beautiful. So, Alan, thank you so much for being with us today. And will you let us know how they can get in touch with you? Do you have anything going on in your business that you're sharing right now?
Well, you can always email me at news@throughyourbody.com. That's the best way to reach out to me personally. I or my team will get back to you. And I am having the evolutionary mystic meditation, which is sort of the foundation of all the work that you've done, Jackie, that we've done together, and that we talked about today. That program is really only open 3 times a year. So we're coming up actually this week, we're opening the doors to the course. And so I know you have the link to invite people here to a demonstration of evolutionary mystic meditation in 90 minutes. You can move from your normal everyday waking persona and into experiencing the infinite stillness of your true self, the divine love of your true self, and that evolutionary mystic, that peak of the pyramid that really embodies and knows your soul purpose. So, Jackie will enter a link for that if you want to experience it. If you want to know more about the, how it works and why it works and what are the 5 stages of a spiritual badass, the mystic's evolutionary journey, then I'm actually having a webinar tomorrow night, Thursday night, about that, and you can put the link in the chat or in the,
I will put it in the Facebook group in the comments. Yeah, I'll put all those links there. This work is truly a gift. I know I was working with one client recently, and we were working with her saboteur, and the gifts that her saboteur shared with her, she was like, oh my God. She had no idea she even had a saboteur, and to get in touch with the hold it had on her was incredible, life-changing. Yeah. Yeah, so this work is absolutely amazing. If you're feeling stuck in any area of your life and you're tired of it and you really want to make some huge strides, this is definitely a huge gift for you. So thank you. And thank you everybody for chiming in. For those of you who will be watching in the future, please leave any comments. And thank you.
So always a pleasure to be with the real fucking Jackie Kane. I call her the JFK, the real deal, Jackie fucking Kane. So you'll learn I love my sacred, but I love a dash of profane to go with it. So,
I call it speaking French. I only speak a few words in French, so yeah.
Well, you know why they call a French drain a French drain? I'm sure there's tongue involved.
I'm sure there's what?
Tongue involved.
Yes, yes. All right.
That's it for my bad humor for the day. Ah. Jackie Kane, thank you so much for the privilege to be with you and your group. So if I could just lead us all in a closing that comes out of my work with Tai Chi. So if you would take your right hand into a soft fist and say power.
Power.
And your left hand, a soft open palm, and say compassion.
Compassion.
And now compassion over power.
Compassion over power.
A bow of respect and appreciation. We need both power and we need compassion. And when we take our raw, authentic power and filter it through the compassion of our divine heart, then we live into our destiny and our soul purpose and our true self.
Beautiful. So true. And you're very welcome. Carrie says, thank you. This was so enlightening. And she says, oh my, but I'm not sure which part we were getting at that point. But you're so welcome, Carrie. And thank you everybody for listening. Thank you.